moderator, if you will. My name is Rob Korn. I am the chapter chairman of Young Americans for Freedom here at the College of Lake County. We're really excited to bring you this event today. But before we begin, I want to explain the reason for this event. I also want to explain the structure of this event. And after I do all that, I'll move on to introducing the panelists. And then from there, we can start to take questions from the audience, all right? So we hope that everyone uses this event as a learning experience. We hope everyone leaves here smarter. We hope everyone leaves here a better student and a better individual.
Just a little bit.
We hold these events to expand diversity of thought on campus, to advance higher education, and to mend the social fabric. YAF takes pride in making sure everyone's political views on campus are heard and their political views are expressed on campus without regret or shame. It has been a growing trend on college campuses around the country where the censorship of free speech has become popular among the student body. So let's make sure that CLC is not one of those places. Let's make sure we can move forward as fellow Americans and communicate with each other to the best of our ability. I think if we can do that, we can make an enormous stride towards reason and understanding with each other. So the reason for this event is because you constantly hear this narrative in society that conservative women are just plain miserable, right? They're living this handmaid's tale, they're barefoot cooking in the kitchen all day. Well, that is totally far from the truth, right? In fact, the New York Times actually reported on a study in 2016 that pointed out that conservative women are much happier in their general lives and their marriages, despite being silenced about their political views around the workplace. Conservative women around the country have actually band together to push back against the liberal status quo lifestyle that they're expected to live. You see this a lot in academia. You see a lot of conservative professors, conservative administrators, and conservative students have always noticed that their political opinions have been drowned out by the demands of excessive, more tolerant, and inclusive policies, which makes it almost impossible to express their views around the workplace or in front of their classmates. We are hoping that this event will change that. We hope that this event will shine some light on that issue and prevent that from happening to anyone on this campus. So this is strictly a Q&A format. This is not a debate. A lot of people thought that this was going to be a debate. It's not. It's basically just an open question format, and the ladies will take questions from the audience about any range of political topics. Anything from climate change to abortion, you take your pick. They will try to answer your questions to the best of their ability, and there can also be follow-up questions after each response. If you'd like to ask a question, we ask that you form a single file line right here to the left of the chairs, and patiently wait for your turn to ask your question. We ask that you keep the questions meaningful and quick, so we aren't spending too much time dissecting your thoughts during the event. The ladies on this panel have worked really hard to prepare for this event, and they did it in a very, very short time. So we need to respect their time and make sure that we aren't wasting it. I want everyone to remember, for this event, there is no right or wrong question, and there is no right or wrong answer. This is strictly an open discussion, learning experience for everyone on campus. So please keep that in mind. So without further ado, can we give a round of applause for all the conservative women panelists we have here today? So, starting closest to me, we have a new member this semester. Her name is Kat, and she's actually considering majoring in communications and hopes to be an editor for a magazine publication or possibly a U.S. diplomat. So, give it up for Kat. And next to her is Zoe. She's majoring in biology, and she hopes to be a research scientist one day. So if you got some gender questions, it's probably the person to ask. So give it up for Zoe. So one of our newest members, Shauna, she's been very, very active. I actually went walking with her and collecting signatures the other day. She's been about a member for a month. She's working on a business major and obviously hopes to own a business one day. So give it up for Shauna. Next to her is Kayla. This is the most interesting one of all, by the way. So Kayla is actually majoring in music education, and she hopes to one day be a high school band director. So give it up for Kayla. Sarah is sitting next to her. She's a former YAF member from Warren Township High School, and she's actually majoring in medicine and hopes to be a ER doctor or a cardiovascular surgeon one day. So if you have some healthcare questions, she's probably the person to ask. That's Sarah. Give it up for Sarah. And last but not least, Liberty on the end. She's been a member also for about 2 months. She's majoring in education and wants to be a high school history teacher. So give it up for Liberty. So the way I'm going to conduct this event is I'm not going to give the microphone to the audience. I'm actually going to hold the microphone. And if you have a question, just please line up over next to the chairs, and I will come over and I will hand you a microphone or let you talk into the microphone and ask your questions. So, does anybody have questions ready? Brian does. Brian comes to our meetings every week, and he's always got questions. Everyone be like him. All right, Brian. You can't stand up yet. Let everyone see you. Come over here so we can kind of get you.
Hello. So there's a universal consensus that conservatives don't believe in the pay gap. Yet you have a Utah representative with the name of James Green, Republican, that said that equal pay for women will be bad for families and societies. So there you have a contradiction between beliefs and values. So I would like to know your opinion on the pay gap. And before you guys tell me your opinion, I would like to give you some information from the U.S. Census Bureau. It says that on average, a woman working full-time earns 80.7 cents for every dollar a man does working full-time. Additionally, women median annual earnings are $9,909 less than men. So is the pay gap really a myth? Or why do conservatives choose not to believe in the pay gap and fix the pay gap?
Thank you.
Hello? Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, thank you for your question. So, my take on this issue is that the pay gap is real. I mean, if you look at the data, we can see that. But first of all, the way that data is collected and then analyzed is problematic. And second of all, the reasons why that data exists is also problematic. We see that women generally work part-time instead of full-time. They go into professions that don't pay as much as the professions men enter. Do you ladies have anything you want to add?
I would also like to add, I mean, you do have to take into consideration the time. You know, a lot of women do have other activities outside of work, not all of them, some of them, so you have to take into consideration that they're not being paid for those hours, that they are doing other things, so that also factors into this.
I think if the wage gap was like a huge problem, we go and we think about if women are getting paid less, then why wouldn't every employer just hire all women and they could get less money? It doesn't work like that.
Cool. Yeah, if you want to rebuttal, you want to follow up with your question?
I mean, you mentioned that when these studies are done, that they don't compare full-time workers to full-time workers, but this study is done with women working full-time compared to men working full-time. And now, to the point that Kayla saying that if women earn less, then they would only hire women. That's irrational. I don't think any job is allowed to do that. If they could, they probably would. So I don't think that's a rational reason as to why women should get paid less. Now, I guess my question that didn't get addressed is why aren't conservatives doing anything to fix the wage gap, or are you guys against equal pay?
Well, because we think that the reason this pay gap exists is because women are making choices to dictate that financial outcome, and we believe in women making their own choices. That's why.
And it's not that we don't believe in the wage gap, it's that women are generally more caretakers. We choose our family over our job, or at least that's how I am. So I mean, if it came to my job or my family, I would pick my family over my job. If that means I get my paycheck at the end of the week is less than my husband's, then so be it. But that was my choice.
Okay, so let's say you and I apply for the same job, accounting. would you be fine with me earning $9,000 more than you do in a year while we do the same job?
I mean, if you work more than me,
Well, I
I'm
said
fine
the
with
same
it.
job, same full-time hours.
Same, like,
hours.
same control
Because
variables?
that's what the study was, same variables, controlled
Well,
variables.
what about education? What about experience?
I mean, I think if we're in an accounting firm and we both have the same jobs, we should have near the same level of education.
From a CLC graduate. That's unfortunate, but an employer would much rather employ someone from an Ivy League school as opposed to a community college. So obviously, they're going to offer more to that person. And you mentioned also experience. Someone who interned a lot at accounting firms is obviously going to be offered a higher starting salary because they have more experience. They're more desirable.
Okay, so just to clarify, so you believe that if you're doing the same job at the same firm, you shouldn't get paid the same,
No, I'm saying...
based on where you went to school?
You're framing the question in a
Because that's my question. My question is, if you're applying for the same job at the same firm and you earn less just because you're a woman, is that
But you see,
okay?
it's not because I'm a woman, it's because we come in as different candidates. You're framing the question in a very odd way. It's like you can't control for experience, you can't control for education, you can't control for those kinds of variables, which are the deciding factors in why one applicant may receive a higher starting pay than another applicant. And you have to keep in mind, there are also industries where women are offered more than men. Is that a concern of yours?
Sure it is. That's what feminism is, equality for both genders.
We can discuss that a bit later.
Okay, so I just want to kind of expand on what he's saying. So the test that he is talking about, it actually just takes all the males who are in the workforce and how many hours they work and all the women in the workforce, and they combine it and they divide it. And that's basically how they come up with it. They don't factor in things like job choice, things like experience, right? So technically, women aren't, okay, so like you said, you both work in an accounting firm, and you both walk in and you both have the same exact credentials, and you're applying for the same job. No employer is trying to give the women less, just specifically off of discrimination, right? So the actual discrimination inside of the wage gap is actually one of the factors, right? They don't count every single factor when they put out these actual studies. So that's something that you have to definitely look into. And it's also worth noting that places like Sweden, places like Sweden, Denmark, all the Nordic countries, they've actually gone farther than any other society to make gender equality the law. And even in those areas, you see things like 20-to-1 female nurses to male nurses, and it's the same thing, 20 male engineers to female engineers. And that is strictly due to the choice, the free choice that men and women make inside of society. So you also have to keep those factors in mind. But I do want to kind of move on from that. This guy's got his hand up. You got a question? You want to follow that? What's your name?
Javier. Another thing that kind of factors into that is the amount of experience that she was talking about. So when you go into a higher level job, they're not going to give you the exact what you're going to earn in that job. So they're going to kind of ask you what you expect to learn, or earn, I mean. And so you actually have the ability to choose if you're going to earn $5,000, $10,000 more. I know this from experience because both my mother and father work in the same job field. My father's a little bit ahead, but because of him, he knew that, and he was actually able to get her $10,000 raise when she moved from one position to another because of the experience she had. So it wasn't the fact that she was a woman, it was the knowledge that she had when it came to entering the position. So they don't go whether you're male or female, they go from the experience that you have. So, yeah, exactly. So you could have a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge, but if you don't sell yourself to that employer, it doesn't matter if you're male or female, you're not going to get paid more than someone else in the same position.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that. Thank you. So we're going to take another question. Does anybody have one? Jessica, I know you got one. Come on. All right. So Jessica's going to ask the ladies a question here.
So I know nothing about politics, but earlier you did say that there's women that are caretakers, right? Therefore, what about those women that aren't caretakers, don't have childs? They've been working. They're still not getting paid equally as males that work with them. What do you guys do about that?
I think the whole argument here is we're trying to figure out if women actually get, obviously if women actually get paid less than men, but we're not talking about it just based on their sex. We're talking about, we are trying to take that out of the equation. We're talking about how many, how many things that they do versus how many things that men do in their job. Yeah, maybe their career title might be the same. That doesn't mean that they necessarily do the same work. Someone could do more work than others, and that all factors into it. So we're trying to take this gender out of the equation by saying, look, women have the choice to do all of these things, but they are choosing otherwise, and that factors into why they're not getting paid as much. They may not be getting paid as much.
Ryan, you have another question? You want to follow up? Go ahead.
I mean, you guys seem to be on this idea that the pay gap is simply because of the experience that they have. Do you guys have any studies to back this up? I know you guys had a couple of weeks to back up these questions, and I believe that this is a question you guys could expect to be asked in a panel like this. So you guys keep saying it's based on experience. Do you guys have any studies that prove this? Because I have a lot of studies that prove that the pay gap is 2%, even when you take into consideration their education, their experience, and everything. So I was just wondering if any of you had actual studies, since you guys had more time than us, the people out here asking questions, to get prepared.
Just really quickly before we expand on that, because that is definitely important. We're not saying it's just experience. It's a variety of different issues. First of all, men tend to be more aggressive in asking for a higher starting pay or for bonuses. Men tend to go into fields that pay more. Men are willing to pull longer hours. They're willing to go into jobs that have relocation as an option, and that follows a higher starting pay or bonuses. So it's not just experience. It's a variety of different issues. Is gender one of those issues? It very well may be, and that's terrible, but we can't focus on just that, because there's so many other things that affect that outcome.
If you said it may be a factor into that, then I think that's a problem, and that's something that should be addressed, no matter how small or how big it is.
Sure, yeah.
And the second thing is that you mentioned that men might do this, men might do that, but when they do the studies, they compare equal men and equal women working the same hours, same times, same amount of work, same job position, doing the same things. So I think that's it's not relevant to what I'm saying,
you seem
or
to
the
be,
studies being made.
Yes, let's say you're a man, okay, and I'm a woman. We're both engineers, right? We're doing the same exact job, same hours. That doesn't take into account, did he have more internships? Did he go to an Ivy League? Did he ask for a higher starting pay? It doesn't matter that we have the same title and the same hours. There's a lot of other different issues at hand.
And like I said, you had 2 weeks to prepare, or 3. Do you have any studies to prove that?
We had actually like 2 or 3 days. So, I mean, I'm sure
I've been
we
coming
can
to
pull
your
up the
meetings for
studies.
2 to 3 weeks, and they've been announcing this event for 3 weeks. Do any of
We
you?
got together only 2 or 3 days ago.
Oh, I thought it was individual research as well. So I would figure you guys would have individual research. If
We
you
can
want.
certainly pull it up.
It's fine. If you can.
Sure.
So afterwards, if you'd like to see some stats and stuff like that, but I mean, he is holding some merit that gender does have something to do with the wage gap, but unfortunately it's like less than 5% of what it is. So actually when you start to factor in more things, the gender actually moves down the line because it's not one of the major factors. So does anybody else have questions that they want to? Oh, you stand up and say your name.
My name is Ayla, and I just wanted to ask, so what it sounds like you're saying is basically that it's due to women's personal choice, right? So it might really have to do with social obligations that women tend to have compared to women, right? Having choices, right? I mean, there's been a social standard that's been here for a very long time, and I think that's a big thing. And I think women, due to those social standards, probably don't get the same education as men. They're not taught, like, you should you should sell yourself, you should search for a bigger pay raise. So if someone offered to give women education and not how to give them techniques and to teach them how to sell themselves in companies to ask for bigger pay raises, just like, I don't know your name, said before that, or it was your parents, yes, that after basically your father, right, told his mother about how to sell herself, she actually got a better pay raise. So would you be in support of education for women to get better pay raises and to sell themselves?
Well, of course, we're obviously for the education of women. I don't think any of us or anyone really would say that we don't support education for women. But there already is equal opportunities for women to get this sort of education. For example, in high school, me and all my male counterparts, literally everyone who walked through the doors had to take the same like business management, life resource management course, where we learned how to write an application, how we did mock interviews. Classes here about business classes are open to, again, anyone who wants to take it and anyone who has the time. And so women are being provided with the skills that they need to go into the job force. And so I don't think it's an issue of education, really, that women don't know how to, because we have the resources available already.
And I hate to hog the microphone, but I just want to really quickly jump in before any of you guys. The National Bureau of Economic Research actually stated that women outnumber men in college. So is it an issue of opportunity? I mean, it depends how you look at it, but in higher education, no, we see more women in college than men.
More graduation rates too.
Yeah.
So yes, they do support the education of women. So you want to come up, say your name, have a question?
I was just going to add on to that. So like this goes with what you were just saying about that how women are successful in college, and this, like I was looking at research to back this up, in like Rwanda and World War II, there was like, these are extreme examples, but there was like a genocide in Rwanda in World War II. You know, there was like a lot more women in the workforce and ended up closing the wage gap in those countries. And like this goes back to the fact that women make choices depending on their, you know, caretaking, whether it be there's multiple variables to it, but like whatever they decide to do, they're making these choices to either get a raise or go back home and raise their child most of the time, which I feel like majority is probably that. So that's like a really big reason why women end up not making as much as men, according to some research and statistics.
Great, thanks Matt, appreciate that. I feel like I'm talking to a crowd of conservatives here. What's going on? Anybody else got some questions or want to elaborate on that? Or have a different topic that they want to bring up? Anybody? There's so many people here, come on. Somebody's got to come up. She's got one. We'll get to you next, everybody. Thanks. What's your name?
Zoe. Thanks. I was just that. I just got here, so I don't know if that question has been answered already. But
I said it to 15 minutes
Thank
because
you.
I think that was correct.
Should I start?
Sure.
One of my closest friends actually identifies with the LGBT
Once we get
community.
to another
So I'm a
question
huge
or another
supporter of
speaker,
it.
I'll quickly switch it.
I personally don't support the LGBTQ community just because of my religious beliefs. It just doesn't align with that.
I would also agree with Zoe, and I think we can both say that we have no problem with anyone who makes that decision.
Yeah, one of my best friends is transgender, and I believe that it's not the government's place to insert their right into LGBT.
I would agree as well. My best friend is a part of the LGBTQ. I do support it. I mean, it doesn't affect me in any way.
I would have to agree with most of the people on this panel. While I do know people who are a part of the community and I support them fully in their choices, it truly does not affect me as I am not a part of
The question was very broad, though. You asked us our opinion on the whole LGBTQ community as a whole. Do you have like a specific question, like about LGBTQ, you would like us to answer, or was it just that?
I didn't have a specific question. I just kind of wanted to put it out there and see how you guys would interpret the question. But I guess perhaps a follow-up is, how do you think that I feel like stereotypically perhaps the queer community isn't typically conservative, from my perspective anyway. So how would you, I don't know, how does that play into perhaps your club or your viewpoints or?
Well, on the note of stereotypes, us conservatives, the stereotype is we're all Christians. Not all of us are, but many of us are. And while there may be some religious conflict with the LGBTQ community, I can say that although I am a Christian, I'm a huge supporter of the LGBT community, plus community. I think that it's all about human rights, it's all about human expression, so I'm all for it.
There's also that stereotype that you can't be LGBTQ and be a conservative. My best friend is part of LGBTQ and he is also conservative. We have a lot of guest speakers at YAF conferences that are gay and also conservative as well.
Our club is not exclusive. I mean, anyone and everyone can come to our club no matter who you are.
Okay, cool. You got a question? All right, cool, man. Come on up here. Relating to the same thing?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Say your name.
My name is Omar. I believe it was you that spoke about human rights.
Yeah.
I want to know your feelings towards the administration banning transgenders from joining the military.
I disagree with that decision. I think if somebody wants to serve our country, that is, in my eyes, one of the most admirable things you could want to do. And you feeling as if you're in the wrong body, as I understand it is interpreted in the LGBT community, I think I disagree with that.
Any other ladies?
They would answer if they wanted to. They would answer. I disagree.
You disagree? Oh. So, anybody else? Anybody else got a question? Oh, Zoe, again. There you go.
Hi, sorry, I thought of something. So what are your thoughts on Pence's idea that conversion therapy should be implemented if he were to? I'm not entirely sure of what Trump's thoughts are on that, but I'm assuming since it's his VP, you know, he's not. But anyway, what are your thoughts on Pence's thoughts to implement conversion therapy? Do you think it's an effective way to perhaps, you know, I mean, I'm not going to say like exterminate. I am queer, so obviously I don't agree with the extermination of queer rights and queer people, but just wondering.
Thank you.
Should I start? Okay. I've never really heard of Vice President Pence saying that, so I'm not entirely sure. But I can say that anybody suggesting conversion therapy is perhaps a bit outdated in their thinking. That's all I can say about it.
I really don't know that much about conversion therapy, so I'm not sure how effective that would be.
I mean, me either, but I'm pretty sure it's just generally not.
And I think further into sort of the economics of that is he did call for state funding for these sort of conversion camps, if you want to call them, I suppose. And I think that's where I would have to disagree. Obviously, I don't agree with conversion camps at all, whether they're state funded or privately funded. However, I think the idea that taxpayer dollars are going towards a cause that they may or may not believe in, I don't think that is right at all. And so I would have to completely disagree with Pence in his idea for a state-funded conversion therapy program, or even a privately funded one, although it is people's choice, of course, to support them, but I would not personally.
And I think you had a question, right? I'm sorry, I missed you.
Sean, a question for you ladies is, can you describe your position on immigration?
Thank you.
I mean, this country was, started from immigrants, and I think conservatives, we love immigration legally. There is a legal way that you can get into this country, and we support that 100,000%. We support that legally.
Just one thing. Conservatives always love saying they love legal immigration, and they always have pride saying that. Yet every year with every administration that goes by, they make it harder for illegal immigration to be possible, such as the current precedent lowering the refugee cap to an all-time low of 18,000. The other all-time low has been 30,000 back during 9/11, and currently he went from 30,000 to 18,000. And it's also currently the time where 25 million people are looking for asylum in the United States. So in the time of most need, the president is lowering the cap to 18,000 by saying that we can't accept them because we don't know who they are. Yet there are 0 incidents of these refugees committing acts of terrorism. Why is it that you guys love legal immigration yet always seem to make it harder for immigrants to come here legally?
So I'm actually just Googling that so I can be a bit more well-read on that cap. I will say that I personally, this may go against what some of the ladies here think, I personally want to reform our immigration system to make it easier for people to enter this country legally. But, and there is a but, they have to come into this country legally. Just as Shauna put it, we conservatives do believe in legal immigration, but it has to be legal. I'm a first-generation American, so I understand how important immigration is to this nation. However, it has to be legal. We have to have laws and follow them if we're going to be the strongest country in the world.
Oh, you got another question? All right.
So one of the biggest things I know now is that actually a lot of immigrants do come over legally. They get green visas from companies who want cheap labor and basically want cheap labor, so the demand for immigrants is high, but they don't continue their visas because, again, opinions change, things change due to immigration laws, and basically people are just overstaying their welcome. So they are coming over legally, it's the fact that companies are in demand for immigrants due to cheap labor. Does that kind of change your opinion on things, or what do you think about that general idea?
I mean, we still have immigration laws and we need to enforce them in order to have a civil society. So I think that, you know, these businesses need to enforce that immigration law and, you know, consider bringing, you know, this person over to this country legally so that they can work for that company under our laws.
No, I'm saying that they are bringing them over legally. They do go through the paperwork, do give them the visas. They are here legally, but they don't continue that paperwork, basically.
But then if they're not, if they're not continuing the paperwork, then are they staying here legally? Like, yeah, they got their foot in the door legally, but as you put it, they're outstaying their welcome, and that is in the eyes of the law, not our conservative opinions.
Yes, but you're basically taking someone into your country, they set up their home. Don't you think that's somewhat morally wrong? To then kick them out when you don't need them no more?
Well, if they took on the visa, they surely knew the start and end date of that visa. So it's up to them to act. It's up to them to decide how they want to act once that visa expires.
Right.
So it's an easy question. Do you guys think there's corruption within the immigration system where people get certain advantages to be legal in the United States?
I don't really have an opinion on that because I'm not particularly well-read on corruption within the immigration system, but I don't doubt it. I mean, there's certainly a possibility.
I do think there is. For example, when my parents came here, they came here through like the right way. They had to go through all those months, all those years to come here. But then our neighbor, they were wealthy. They were able to pay through and then get here. When you say, is there corruption? Yeah, of course there's corruption. But the majority of the time, well, all we want is for people to come here, but people to come here the right way, even if it takes a long time. And to fix that, I think what we need to do is, this is just a theory, is whoever is already here, we give them residency, not citizenship, because I would think that's way too far. We stop illegal immigration from coming in so that legal immigrants can come in, and then people would get more jobs, people would be safer on the streets, we wouldn't have so many guns, illegal guns, drugs, and rape, all that kind of happening.
I agree with you.
Okay, I'll get to you next, all right? Oh, are you adding onto this? Oh, okay, you're adding onto this. Okay, just 1 second, I'll get to you.
Okay, so most of like the illegal and drugs that you're talking about are due to just plain out right illegal immigration and bringing things across the border illegally. which is completely separate from, to be honest. I honestly don't know. My mom's a sociologist. She's seen many studies on this, that most of the jobs that immigrants do are the jobs that nobody wants. It's not decreasing any of the work. It's not, most people who are born in America tend to get a higher education and don't do jobs like mowing your lawn or doing other things. And if someone here, you know, legally comes over, I'm not saying illegally, but legally comes over, gets a higher education, I mean, they're citizens. I mean, they get their citizenship, I understand that. So, I mean, I guess I'm just trying to bring up the idea that there's a difference between people who are just bringing drugs and guns and that kind of stuff over, and then people who are come over here legally. They're here to work.
So you're saying that the illegal people who come here are doing the jobs that Americans don't want to do? Is that what you're kind of saying?
Well, not so much want to do, but overqualified for.
Okay.
People, I mean, there are people who don't get the higher education and end up doing those jobs, and you're saying that we're losing jobs because of it?
We are.
But not necessarily?
I don't know if you know Steven Crowder. Actually, he posted a very great video where he conducted an experiment where he basically took illegal immigrants who were legal immigrants, they were conservative, and American people, homeless people, and they gave it out to, they interviewed him to like businesses and stuff, and see who would want to take the job. It turns out that no, we don't care who takes the job. Like if a homeless person on the street is given a job, they would take the job. If an immigrant was here and they were legally here, and if they wanted the job, they would take the job as well. So like the myth that illegal immigrants or they'll do the jobs that we don't want to do, that's just not true. If you go out to Chicago and ask some like a homeless man who's living on the street if they want to do a job and get paid and get a house, I mean, I'm pretty sure they'll say yeah.
I ultimately agree with that, and I'm really just talking about educational standards. And it changed, I guess, sorry, it wasn't really a question, it was more really just putting out an idea and seeing what your thoughts were, so thank you.
Yeah, of course, thank you.
Thank you, thank you. And you got a question, right? Can you state your name and your question, please?
Hi, my name's Karina, and I have a question. What do you guys think about the DREAM Act? Because I know one of you guys said you wouldn't be for citizenship for people who are already here. I'm just asking because this is very personal. Me, I'm a DACA student.
Thank you.
It was you. When you gave your plan, you said for the people here, you would give investments, not citizenship.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I don't know too much about the Dreamers Act. When I said give residency, you did come, I mean, residency are for the illegal immigrants. At the end of the day, you still broke the law. But we're not gonna reward you for breaking the law. If you're a legal immigrant and you're here, I mean, that's fine, you're illegal. But citizenship is too far. That's just my opinion. This is like, just my opinion straight out. I don't, citizenship, like you would be able to vote, I don't feel comfortable with that. Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, I've been in the United States since I was 4 years old. I've gone to school here. I'm in college obviously right now. I worked very hard to get where I am, and I have much further to go, and I think it's only fair that I am able to vote in a country that I am, in my opinion.
Thank you. You got a question? Follow up? All right.
So a few things to what you've said. I have my own business. I've had it for almost 3 years, and that's not true. I've asked a lot of homeless people in the city to work for me, and they don't want to work. They simply want the money, they want the drugs, they want the alcohol. So, and I'm not saying that's their fault. I just think that's a problem of our society and our education system. We have failed them in our education system, and that's something conservatives don't see either. Now, going back to her point, do you not believe they're American enough to be able to vote, given that most of those dreamers come here at the age of 2? And you also put the blame on them for a crime they didn't even know they were committing. So how can you say they broke the law when their parents brought the majority of them here without them knowing?
I mean, you bring up a good point. I'm not saying that they're not American. They are American, without a doubt. But once again, this is just my opinion. Like, you can hate it all you want. It's it's not going to change it. But you said they are American, yes they are, but they didn't know what they were doing, but their parents sure did. I mean, if the parents wanted the life of good children, like what could have happened to me, because I was almost going to be born in India and we were going to live here. They could have gotten the citizenship for here too as well. They were already here, they were just one step closer.
I got another, oh.
If I could just jump
Sure.
in to show
Yep.
that conservatives don't all think one thing. I personally would say, in my opinion, I would award I guess award isn't the correct word, but I would give citizenship to those individuals because they were, if not born, they were brought to this country at such a young age. They were Americanized just as we who were born here were Americanized. So I think they love this country, they want the best for their country, and I think it's only fair that they're regarded as Americans because they practically are. The difference is that they were probably just born a couple hundred miles in a different direction. So that's just my opinion. I am a conservative, but see, we have different opinions.
I would have to
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I would have to sort of agree with Pat in the sense that obviously here we have like natural born citizenship, which means that when I was born here, I became a citizen. And that's great for people who are born here, but for people who came here at the age of 2, again, they didn't know what they were doing, and their parents wanted a better life for them, bringing them over. And so I would agree with Pat and disagree with Sarah, because I think that if you were brought over at such a young age, you should still have to go through the citizenship process. You should still have to take the tests, pay the fines, like go through the whole, long paperwork. But you should, at the end of the day, become a citizen if you so choose, or at least a legal resident.
And you had a follow-up, right? Hold on, Corey. I'll get to you in a second.
So, do you think it would be a good idea to set up a system for those cases, like separate from kind of like a legal system, something that's set by the government, for people who have been here, brought legally, and visas have ended, or they were brought here at very young and don't know any better? Legal systems to give them a chance to, that's kind of separate from because there's only really one system and it causes a lot of backup and it causes a lot of issues. Do you think we should make a separate system for those special cases? To give them citizenship, to give them a chance to kind of give them a better chance since, 1, they're already here, 2, the lives have already started, kind of give them a better chance at staying there, and so forth.
Thank you.
So I just want to bring it back to the main issue here, which I hear your question, thank you so much, and I respect and understand what you're saying. But the main issue here is that we have a huge immigration problem. We had this immigration problem for over 20 years. I mean, Ronald Reagan was giving amnesty to illegal immigrants who were born here 20 years ago, and Donald Trump, I don't know if you know this, back in January, he just gave 1.8 million DACA dreamers amnesty for funding for the border wall. So if we're going to talk about this issue, we have to talk about what's been happening in the past, the history of this problem, and how we need to fix this border problem, because it is a serious issue for our country. And if we're going to have a civil society, we need to be able to control who comes in and out of our country so that we can, keep track of that.
Yes, and from a video I've watched that, again, credible. I don't know if you've ever seen Adam. Adam Knows Everything. But one of the biggest things he said that 40% of immigrants don't come to the border, they come through a plane, they get legal visas because of big corporations. So the problem isn't lying with Mexico or wherever other immigrants, anywhere else. It really has to lie within us and our demand. Big companies want cheap labor. They get cheap labor from immigrants. So shouldn't we be focusing on big corporations instead of walls and borders?
If you look at the numbers, only 42% of immigrants overstay their visas.
Do you think that we should do something about the corporations who are promulgating cheap labor from immigrants and basically encouraging it? Do you think we should do something about that?
I think yes. I think American companies should prioritize American labor. And to go back to your initial question, yeah, I think there should be a subsystem within the general system, because that is kind of like an exception to the whole system and to the whole rule. It's a really unique issue these children are put in, and it's unfortunate. And I think to cater to that issue with maybe like a specialty system, or however you want to call it, would only further fortify the American dream. The whole concept of you come here to better yourself for the opportunities, and in a way this country is kind of going to like give you a hand in achieving your dreams.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to turn the heat up on you. My name's Coriel. I'm part of YAF too. So I want to turn the heat up here today, you know, and get a more controversial issue going here. So I don't know, maybe I didn't read stuff right online, or maybe I didn't research it enough, but it sounded like to me that in Congress, we're talking about Congress, in Capitol Hill, we had a debate about whether we should allow abortions up to the 3rd trimester. These were partial birth abortions. And literally, this is the bill saying that, hey, look, if a baby, an infant baby is born alive who survived abortion, in other words, they tried to get an abortion partial birth, but it survived, it ought to get the same health care as any other infant. And we had Democratic senators vote against this bill. They voted against this bill. Like, we're having a debate and we're going to kill an infant, a 3rd trimester. This is not even 6 weeks. So how do you guys feel about this?
This is extremely disheartening to me personally, this issue of abortion. Extremely disheartening. Just last year alone, 300,000 babies were killed in the womb. It is absurd to me that this is happening. And I oppose anyone who is making these types of laws.
Anybody else had a comment on it? It's a pretty perverse notion. Oh, you want, let me, no, you're done? Oh, Dee, you got a question?
Yeah.
All right, stand up, say your name.
Hi everyone, I'm Dee. I'm Vice President for Students for Life Club. So speaking on abortion, do you guys believe aborting a baby because of a medical issue? Because I was in that situation and doctors were trying to force me to have an abortion, and I almost had an abortion at 24 weeks. But I changed my mind and walked out of the place and decided not to abort my daughter, and she's 2 years old now and one of the smartest kids. So if I want to ask.
Thank you.
If I could just quickly jump in.
Sure.
I'm not as well read on the topic of abortion as I should be as a woman, so what I'm going to say may not align with what I truly believe, but I just want to offer an alternative. You are really strong and you're so brave for that. Congratulations. I hope your daughter has a wonderful life. Many women are going to be put in this situation, whether it's emotionally, financially, whatever it may be, where they can't support a child with disabilities. So I feel as if it's a very touchy issue, obviously, but we have to be sympathetic towards the individuals who may not have the strength or the financial support to take care of a child who has disabilities. Just an alternative point of view.
I mean, I think all life is valuable, no matter if there's a medical condition or not. Every single human life has value to it, and so I think that in the case of a child having a medical disability, I don't see that as a reason to abort that child. And I have major respect for you for making that decision. Seriously, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. I think, you know, in the case of a mother whose life is at risk, I think that is a different issue here, because now we're talking about the caretaker of someone else's, of her own children that she may already have. And so, I mean, but the medical technology is very advanced today, and I don't see in the majority of cases this, you know, isn't a big issue when we're talking about the issue of abortion.
Thank you. Omar, right? Come on up.
To touch on that, what do you guys think about I guess, abortion for women who have been raped?
So it's my opinion that life begins at conception, and we shouldn't punish the child or the misdoings of another man. I also understand that it's going to be very traumatic, the 9 months and then the actual delivery. It's something I also struggle with too, to come to terms with. When it comes to rape, I prefer that no one would get an abortion because I would not want to kill an innocent life for the misdoings of someone else. But at the end of the day, if you really, I prefer you not actually.
Hold on, I think I got some people standing up here for some questions. Arturo, you wanted one, right? Hey, Corey, you're done.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday, Coriel.
Okay, my name is Arturo Ramirez. I'm currently the editor-in-chief for the Chronicle, which is CLC newspaper issue. So this is a question for hopefully that at least some of you can answer. I know I haven't heard much from some of you. So I've been hearing a lot of bad things about Trump. I never hear anything good about him. How do you think Trump is doing so far in office?
Good days, bad days. There are some things that I agree with. He's done a lot to support veterans, and I think that's brilliant because our veterans aren't getting the care and support that they need. There are some things that I think are questionable, to put lightly. So yeah, good days, bad days.
I think, to your question, we don't hear good things about Donald Trump. We have a serious media problem in this country. They don't even want to talk about the facts. It's very, very biased. And I think that's important to note when we're talking about the President of the United States, because we can't even talk about issues. We can't even hear news about issues that are happening without it being so biased. We just want to hear the straight facts and then create an opinion. We don't want to hear the opinionated version coming out of these sources that are telling us that these are the facts. It's wrong. And personally, I think Trump's doing a great job.
I think that Donald Trump is doing a great job as our president. I mean, he has lowered the unemployment rates. He has created so many jobs for people. So I would have not so much disagree, but I personally do not support Trump, which I know is sort of a controversial thing coming from a conservative and Republican, but I don't. I don't believe he was the greatest choice for our country, but again, I support anyone who voted him because I don't want to discriminate. And so as a woman, we're discussing sort of abortion and these sort of things. Donald Trump, during his office, he has the lowest women unemployment rate, which I think is great. Because if women are empowered to get jobs and then have this money, they'll be able to financially support a child, even if it does have a disability or whether it is well able. And so, obviously, I do disagree with him on a lot of things. And so, I think he has created a big partisan divide in our country. But on the other hand, he has done really good things for our economy and we've had the highest GDP in a long while because of some of his policies.
Okay, I'm gonna let her go, and then I'll let Brian go, and then I'll let you.
Okay, I've taken a business class and we actually talked about the economy and how he's raised it pretty high. Problem with that is the way money works, and if it gets really high, it's gonna crash really low. It's just kind of the balance of how the economic system works, and a lot of the trade with China and him putting a lot of taxation on that to prevent, which was a real issue, and I agree that it's a big issue that China has stolen a lot of ideas from us, done a lot of things to put us in debt and so on and so forth. But I still don't think his approach towards it was very good. There's a lot of things that he's done with the economy that haven't been good. Relationships with other countries haven't been really good since he's been in office. I understand that he's done a couple good things, and to be honest, even if he wasn't president, he could do those things. I mean, he is a powerful figure in the United States, has a lot of money. But as president, as someone who is in office, he has not, I don't believe he has set there's certain jobs in the office that you have to pay attention to, which is the economy. Yes, it's risen a lot, but it's going to crash pretty soon. And the trades with other countries and relationships with other countries, which is another big thing that as president is a big job, is maintaining those relationships he has not maintained very well. What do you think about that kind of issue?
I agree with you. I think there are some things that our president should kind of pump the brakes on, and I think there's an image the president of the United States should step up to, one of diplomacy, one of prestige, and regretfully that's not really the case with our current president. However, as we mentioned, there are things that we can't deny our president has done for our country, which had another president been in office, we don't know if that would have been the case. We just have to go with the facts at hand. He has done a lot of good for the country, but on the flip side, there are some things that he could do better.
I think as far as relationships with other countries go, I would disagree with Bonnie's sort of movements, I suppose. And recently, this just happened today. You can find it on all major news sources. I'm personally drawing from Al Jazeera, which is my favorite. The U.S. recently withdrew troops from Syria, and as soon as Trump announced that, Turkey went in and then bombed Syria. And so you can see that whether it is direct or indirect, the just presence of U.S. forces there had prevented that. And now as soon as we sort of created that void, Turkey's come in and bombed. And so do I agree with Trump's movement to do that? No, I do not. And so that is, I think, one issue where I struggle with agreeing with him is his international policy towards other countries.
I think you've been waiting for a little while, so come on up here. Say your name and your question.
So my name is Victor. I have a question for you girls. So Trump has been talking about Ukraine. You know, that the involvement with Ukraine, about the investigation with Joe Biden, just like crazy stuff. So what are you girls thinking about Trump doing an investigation with Joe Biden? What do you girls think about that? It's such a dumb question.
No, that was a great question. Thank you.
So if we talk about the Ukraine involvement, we can even go back to the 2016 election where the DNC was talking to Russia, or to Ukraine, getting information about Trump, and I think nobody in the media talks about that. How there's literally on tape Ukraine officials saying, oh yeah, I helped the Hillary campaign. Nobody talks about that in the media.
You want to follow up, or you good? You want to follow up?
Yeah, so I've been hearing news about, you know, Trump with Ukraine and all that stuff. Also talking about his part of his impeachment inquiry that people are talking about, and also involvement with the House and the Senate too. Also, kind of a strange thought, and just adding like a comment to it. It's just kind of weird how Trump is basically interfering, you know, with Ukraine and as well as China about like to investigate with Joe Biden. It's just like the thought of like he as a president, he's just like doing terrible stuff, just basically involving with like an investigation part with it.
So under the Obama administration, he put Joe Biden in charge of the anti-corruption in Ukraine, and then he involved himself in their politics and their anti-corruption bureau. I know 2 of them over there have been indicted just for interfering in our elections in the 2016 election. And that was all under the Obama administration because they were helping the DNC, and like that's proven fact. And under Obama, they gave millions of dollars just to rid out of corruption in Ukraine.
Excuse me, I do have to get going. I have work at 2, and so I would just like to say thank you for this opportunity. And if any of you guys see me in the halls or want to reach out and talk more about politics, I'd love to share more of my opinions with you. And again, my name is Liberty, just like the statue. Thank you.
When we found out her name was Liberty, we were like, we have to make her a member. She has to be part of us.
Sorry,
You want to follow up?
I just want to add to that. So he's not trying to gain any political help from that. He's just trying to expose corruption just like Obama did previously, because there has been a lot of corruption in Ukraine.
Also, one more comment to add. Trump, this is about a while ago, he's trying to take off the 14th Amendment with basically immigrants coming over. I don't know if you've heard about that. that basically Trump is trying to get rid of the 14th Amendment, which is saying our natural, which is like natural. I mean, so for me, I think it's dumb because it's part of the Constitution, and basically people deserve, you know, to be born in the United States. Once they cross here, they're immediately United States citizens. So what do you guys think about this opinion about babies coming right here, like it's legally now?
So the 14th Amendment was actually intended for slaves so that they can make their children citizens. But, I mean, in regards to this issue, I think Donald Trump brings up an interesting point because, you know, people are coming across our borders with the intention of having their children here so that they have a tie to America. Instead of following our laws and coming in here legally, they want to come in that way so they can kind of get around this loophole. And I think Donald Trump is trying to, get at that when he's talking about this because, you know, there are people trying to take advantage of the American system. So he's just trying to get at that, in my view.
Anyone else on this? No? Okay, you got another question? Okay, come up here. Say your name.
This is more of a question and a comment. I just wanted to comment earlier on what he said about immigration. I feel like we as a country need to spread out the word asylum, because in Europe, during the Syrian refugee crisis, blah, 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 they spread the word asylum a lot. That's why people came in, and it's not that there wasn't a problem. Obviously, there was an influx of problem, people coming in, too much people. But I feel like if we spread that word asylum, we could control it more as a country. You know what I mean? And my question actually is, and you're a conservative woman on campus, what are your thoughts on abortion? Most conservatives have said abortion should be illegal, people shouldn't do it. Personally, I think it's a choice. You know what I mean? But no, I'm seriously, I want to know your opinion. Because I'm a Democrat, I'm from the other side, and I feel like I as a person, a well-rounded person, should know the other side, especially women's, because this is your issue specifically. So what are your thoughts?
So you're talking about the abortion, not about what your first comment was, immigration. Just to be clear what your question was.
Yeah.
So thank you for your question. I think it's really important that we do listen to all viewpoints, and that's one of YAF's main priorities is to listen to all viewpoints and encourage everyone and anyone who wants to come to our meetings. So shameless plug, come to our meetings. But I think abortion should be illegal. I think that this is not just a women's issue. I think that this is a human issue, and that's where I stand. If you have any questions.
Yeah, I agree with Shauna. Life begins at conception, and that every person deserves to have a life.
How about the child who's about to be born into a family that has very little to no money, who's about to go to school, who's about to join gangs and do drugs, and have that? It's not necessarily even a predetermined life. It's not a predetermined life choice. It shouldn't be, because that child has that choice to do or not do that, correct? But knowing that we as a society have been built that way, why should we we're kind of pushing them in that direction.
So are you saying that living in a poor income home is better than no life at all?
No, I think what I'm saying here is that not having the chance to go that path is much better, because I lived in a third world country before, and I've seen people got their lives ruined because they were born in a very unfortunate situation. I'm fortunate, I went here, I'm in college, obviously, but I feel like women knowing that their lives are not going to be great, knowing that they can't raise their child on their own. Again, for me personally, abortion, I'm with abortion to some point. If the child's already there, if you're like 7 months, just do it. Adopt, give it to adoption. I get that, but if the child is like within conception, first trimester, maybe trimester and a half, then do it. So like, yeah, go ahead.
So do you believe that death is better than life with pain?
Personally, I think so. Because...
What about like a stomach fight? It feels hurt.
Right, but like, I'm thinking about the long-term effects on what's going to happen to that child. That's where I'm coming from. Because I've seen people who got led into a bad life because they didn't have enough money to go to school, or they were worried about going to school. Yes, we have those options of loans, blah, blah, blah. We get that, but we're just putting ourselves more in debt.
I mean, the issue always comes back to, you know, the value of life itself, and I think that every single person has value, no matter who they are. And so, you know, I mean, in the end, it doesn't, you know, to me, it doesn't matter, you know, what their life it looks like. Things can happen, things can change for that person. That person is an invaluable, you know, member of society, and I think, you know, that's part of the reason why, you know, people are opposed to this.
Yeah, and I think like you should never be allowed to kill anybody. And how is no life better than life? If you have life, you have opportunities.
I would say I don't think that like a family situation should determine the child's quality of life. It's kind of just making a hypothetical situation that hasn't even happened yet.
Thanks. I appreciate it, man. Thank you. It's a great question. You know what? I already got you already, so hold on. All right, I'll get to you next. All right, say your name and your question, please.
My name's Rosalia, and going off the whole abortion debate and just a couple other things. One of the biggest reasons right now for bankruptcies is the cost of medical care, and one of the biggest reasons for abortions or not being able to get an abortion is lack of access to health care. So what would you guys do to help people get health care and to reduce abortions?
Can you reiterate your question, please?
I guess it's two. Like, what would you do to reduce abortions, and how would you help with one of our biggest problems right now is our lack of access to healthcare?
Like, what kind of healthcare are you referring to?
Just anything. I mean, I don't know how many people are here, but I don't have health insurance. I don't know how many people here don't have health insurance.
A lot of people don't.
Yeah.
So I think where she's coming from is how can we reduce abortions by maximizing more health care for women? So what would you think would be the best avenue to go down in healthcare to help women obtain the care that they need or obtain the professional opinion that they need before they have an abortion? That's kind of that element.
If I can answer your question more on the specific of reducing abortions, I think education is key. I think we need to make sex ed less of this like taboo, and reiterate options for birth control. The argument about making birth control cheaper or for free, that's a whole different story, but I would say education, prevention, because once the baby's there, whether you're pro-life or you're pro-choice, I think we can all agree that the best thing is prevention. So I would say education and just destigmatizing sex ed and birth control.
I also think, I'm not saying you're conflating these things, but I think some people do, they say that abortion is part of healthcare, which I completely disagree with. I do not think abortion is part of healthcare, nor do I think it should be a part of healthcare, simply because it's the taking of a human life. That's not healthcare in my opinion. And you know, I think that there should be access to healthcare, absolutely. But in terms of abortion, I do not consider that healthcare.
Anything else? Okay, cool. I think, do we have somebody? No, we already asked. Okay, so we have more. I'm going to get somebody new, and then I'll come back to you, all right? All right. State your name and your question, please.
My name's Hannah, and I am obviously in the disabled community, and my question is, what is your stance on the way that people who have disabilities, whether it's a physical disability like I do, or mental, intellectual, or whatever, what is your stance on how they're treated?
So us as conservatives, we are against abortion, and I know, like Democrats, they believe that abortion should be allowed if they have a ailment of some sort. And we are pushing that people such as yourself will have the chance to be alive and have these opportunities.
I see you as no different than anybody else. We value people with disabilities. We love people with disabilities. They're no different from any of the rest of us. You are a valuable member of society.
Yeah, I have to go along with what Shauna said, just that people with disabilities should be treated the same as people who don't have disabilities.
You want to follow up with anything?
And I am exactly like you then. I love.
Wow.
And yep, that's exactly me. And I value people like that. And I'm like, that's my view. It's like, disabilities are normal too, so.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Now, did you have a question? Oh, okay.
Okay, so I'm Liz. Touching back on a comment that you said, I was just curious. You said that you value every life, right? Especially children's lives. Touching on the abortion topic. So, what are your guys' opinions on the detention centers that we have in our southern border?
I regretfully don't know a lot on that. I think I can say that maybe the media is portraying an image that isn't as accurate as it could be. But again, as I said, I'm not well read on that topic. Unfortunately, I can't say much.
I think like the purpose for these children being in these facilities is so to prevent sex trafficking. Sex trafficking is a huge thing that is going on right now on the border, and it's important that these kids stay with their families, but in order to do that, we have to make sure that they are coming over legally.
We got some ladies in line here. All right, hold on.
Hi, it's me, Karina again. About like the whole abortion thing, I can see your guys' view, but where's your support for children after they're born, especially those who grow up in low-income communities, minority communities? Also about the whole...
To touch on that's something we hear quite often, the whole, well, you care about babies in the womb, but once you're out, you don't really care. I think one of the core values of conservatives is building a life yourself. The government isn't your mommy. It's not there to make sure you do well in life. That's your job. There are unfortunately children put in situations where they do need help, and there are some roles that the government should play in everyone's lives, but for the most part, the life you build for yourself should be your life. There are some factors that can affect that and make that incredibly difficult, but it's your life. You have to take care of yourself. You have to build it yourself.
And I would say that there are already programs in place. I mean, we have foster care. We have a lot of, there are various other, organizations that will help you out. And in addition to that, I just want to talk about the problem at the border. Like, as Kayla pointed out, we do have a big sex trafficking problem. And how do we know that these children how do we know that they're their parents? These people can act like their parents, but really not be their parents. And of course, kids, they are naive. So they will, trust that guardian in a way because, they don't know where they are. They don't know who they're with. So it's important that we actually keep them apart in that case because what if they're not their parents?
Why are they in cages though? Why aren't they accommodated? Why aren't they given help?
They are. I mean, there's food down there. There's medical help.
In cages? Okay.
I agree. But we already talked about this earlier, is that how do we know that these are their actual family? How do you know that? These kids that are coming through the border, they are naive. They are in a state of needing help. They need help. And so when these people take them across the border, these sex traffickers, these children want to find the good in them. They want to trust them as a guardian. But how do you find out if they're their actual kids or not? These kids want to trust these people, but these people aren't to be trusted.
So even as a newborn, you know who your mom and your dad is. And if you were to see, you being separated from your mom and dad, seeing the tears, seeing literally the emotional damage and trauma that you're causing to these children, being separated from their mom and dad, I think you know. I don't think there's any doubt that
If you're saying if you're in a traumatic situation at 3 years old, that you wouldn't kind of, psychologically, some people would want to trust these people because they are like a guardian. They are, bringing them over, taking them places.
And even if they weren't guardians, even if, let's say, for some reason they are a sex trafficker, why would you cry for someone if you're not, I would at least assume that they might even be treated better with the sex traffickers. Doesn't that question kind of...
So you're saying... Can I just reiterate, can I just make sure I'm understanding what you're asking? Are you pinpointing in this question the issue with children being separated from their guardians at the border? Is that what you're trying to communicate with us?
Yes, I'm saying that I think that it speaks volumes that children are more scared of being in these detention centers than, I'm not saying that they are sex traffickers, but since that's the thing that you're implying, I'm saying why is it that they would much rather be with the sex trafficker than be in these detention centers?
I didn't imply that they were sex traffickers, but I'm assuming that you think the group did. Just to touch on the whole children being separated at the border, the adults who crossed over the border with their children broke a law.
Sure.
Yes. So one of the repercussions of that, however unfortunate it may be, is that they have to be separated from their children. If you, as an adult here in the United States, an American, are caught drunk driving and you have a child in your back seat, that child, an American, will be separated from his American parents. So when you break a law, there are repercussions. They're unfortunate, yes, but you broke the law. What do you expect?
Thank you. Okay, say your name and question. Oh, did you have something
I
else?
just want to say thank you for your question.
Oh, thanks. Say your name and question, please.
All right, my name's Michael, and
Hold on. I'm taking this microphone because I know you.
Okay.
You might run away with it. Go ahead.
Okay, so am I to understand that you are comparing a child endangerment with drunk driving and leaving your kid in the car with endangerment with drunk driving and leaving your kid in the car with seeking to find a better life, applying for asylum legally, which is a human right? Like, those are two completely different things. And yes, entering the United States without going through the process is illegal. Sorry, it's just nothing. All right. Okay.
Right.
Sorry.
So applying for asylum is a human
Right,
right?
applying for asylum is a human right, and are you really, sorry, let's just start with that. Are you comparing those two things?
Sorry?
Are you comparing child endangerment to seeking a better life through applying for asylum?
Well, there are people who cross the border who are genuinely seeking a better life, and there are people crossing the border who may have malicious intent. So I don't know how to answer that question.
Most of these people bring passports.
I mean, again, how do we know that? There are some cases where there are people who have children in their custody, in their possession, and they're crossing the border and they're claiming these children are their children. If you're crossing the border because you want a better life for your family, you have to do it legally. We have a system. It needs to be reformed. Yeah, it needs to be reformed. I'm the first to say that. But we have a system, and you have to go through it. Yes.
We have a system, and every time the Trump administration does anything to change it, it always limits the amount of migrants that can come through. It limits the amount of resources that are actually applied to getting people through. Hire more magistrates. Stop limiting visa programs. Like, every decision that is made runs counter to what you're saying right now.
Well, I don't recall saying that I support Trump's decisions on that.
But,
well,
sorry.
just because I'm a conservative doesn't mean I support Trump. If somebody muttered that, which I think I heard.
Okay, granted. So do you support hiring more magistrates, opening up visa programs, allowing more people to actually go through the system? Are you condemning the actions of the Trump administration?
As I mentioned earlier in the debate, I am pro refining the system so that it is easier for people to become American citizens.
So specifically, yes, hire more magistrates.
Well, I don't know specifically, yes, hire more magistrates. I would have to do more research into that specific component of the system. But the overarching issue of having a an oversaturated system where it is very difficult and very expensive to become an American, I think that needs to be reformed, absolutely, if that is what you're asking in the grand scheme of things.
All right, thanks. Have a seat, bud.
One more. I'm gonna run away. Also, we don't have to say you can only focus on one thing. You can only focus on your own people. You can only focus on immigration. We can stop dropping out of climate agreements. We can stop cutting our regulations. We can actually punish people who have addicted millions of Americans to opioids. We can fix our immigration problems. We can fix our tax plans. We don't have to do just one thing. And saying that you only have to focus on one thing is just obfuscation.
Is there a question? Is there a question?
No, that's a statement. And fuck all this.
Appreciate that. Say your name and question, please.
Hey, yeah, my name's Pete. Yeah, I love that guy. I just want to say, I love you, man. If you need a hug, I'll hug out. Hey, cool.
I agree, no
story, bro. Yeah, like I said, my name's Pete. I like long walks on the beach, just getting ladies. Gotta break the tension, man. I want some up in here. So I'm just gonna change it up on you. I'm not a believer in this, but I know there's topics on feminists and the wage gap. And since you guys are up here, what are your inclinations on your guys' views for the wage gap? Do you guys believe it or do you not believe it?
Just recap. We touched on this in the beginning. That's why we're jumping. We're not laughing at you. Yeah. Do you just want to recap? Sure, I'll recap. So we agreed that there is objectively a wage gap, but the reason this wage gap exists is often it's often lost in translation, I guess we could say. The reasons that women are paid less than men include, but aren't limited to, education, experience, relocation, the part-time, full-time worker issue, going into professions that pay more, so a variety of issues. It's not just, oh, you have ovaries, sorry, you're gonna get 77 cents. It's a lot more complicated than that.
And I think it's also important to note that, I mean, there are already laws that state that you cannot pay a woman less for the same hours of work and same experience.
That is true. Very true. Was that it? Hey, thanks, man. Appreciate you. Thanks for your question. So, say your name and state your question, please.
Okay, my name is Jesus. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah. So like, I've heard it many times that you guys say like legal. I've heard it like 10 times. I mean, we use like legality as our moral metric system because like, I mean, this is generic. Everybody says it, like slavery was legal, the Holocaust was legal. You know, a lot of fucked up things. I could cuss, not too much. It's fine. We're grown as fuck. So like, I think it'd be like 100 years ago, like, women were barely getting the right to vote. And you guys are like, 1980? Yeah, so like, you guys are conservatives. You guys don't want much to change, but I want to know, out of all you guys, when do you guys like try to centralize with the liberals? Like, when are we gonna put like humanity like past our views, past money, like past all that shit? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I know that you said the state can't even like shouldn't be our mom and take care of us, but you know, we as a people, like everybody here, are trying to like get educated to make a better living for themselves. It's like we should all do it for each other, you know, and for ourselves. Like yeah, when do you guys want to like? When do you guys budge? Like yeah, when do you guys want to like? When do you guys budge?
Conservatism, I think, isn't not changing for the sake of just stubbornly holding on to something because it's familiar to us. Conservatism is about valuing American traditions and values. Oh, I'm sorry. So there's a lot to unpack in your question. I think one of the things you mentioned, other than the when do we want to budge, was, sorry, remind me, what was one of your central questions?
I mean, that was the only question. I had like more comments than questions.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, conservatism. Oh, the morality and the law thing. I think law is more concerned with being objective and with telling us how to act. The morality of law, that's kind of always in the gray area. And that's why we have the legal system. It's to dissect that gray area. But yeah, to touch on your conservatism issue, we're conservatives not because we don't want to change. Conservatism has changed over the years. We're conservatives because we want to uphold American values.
Anybody else want to touch on this? Or, thanks. Or do you want to follow up? Yeah. Okay. Make it quick.
I mean, America, I think, would be great for what it could be, not for what it is. I mean, we are trying to take care of our own selves rather than the people outside that need help. I think we will devour ourselves from the inside. You know, because we are divided. We're not united. And, but yeah, no, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jesus. Appreciate that, man. Alex. Okay, make it quick.
My name is Alex Cantor. Why are you, as women, supposedly conservative? Because I've heard that all Republicans are white men, old, and yada, yada, yada. Why are you, and you're all different races and ethnicities, I'm assuming, why are you conservative?
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm a conservative because I believe in the value of individual choice over the government choosing for you. I believe that the ability to make your own choices for your life rather than putting them in the government's hands is an invaluable value to have, because you are able to control, you know, things for yourself. And when the government does it, I mean, we've seen from history that governments don't do very good jobs at those kind of things. So that's why I'm a conservative.
I'm pretty sure I can speak for everybody here. Like, we pretty much agree with that statement. She said it perfectly. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. Christian. Yep.
All right, my name is Christian. I'm the treasurer of YAF. My question is, in the past year, companies like Google and various other social media companies have come under fire for censoring conservative and more kind of right-wing views while letting more kind of radical left-wing views that very clearly violate TOS remain up on their site and still continue to serve those people. And what I want to ask is, do you think that we should, because I'm a conservative too, so when I say we, I mean those of us on the right, should we support government coming in and regulating these companies to force them to provide service to everyone? Because one of the arguments I see is that these are private companies and that they can do whatever they want. My counter to that would be that the internet was built off of technology that was funded with taxpayer dollars, and despite that, I see a lot of people on the right in publications like Breitbart and Fox say that regulation is defeatism, that we shouldn't regulate, and essentially let the free market solve the problem. What do you think about that?
Thank you.
I would agree. I think it's really important that we have the competition, and then if the government steps in, then they're going to start regulating our free speech on the media.
Which they're already doing, by the way, in New York. Just to let you guys know, they're already regulating our free speech.
Yeah,
And if anyone wants to ask
when the
about that, I'll
government
be happy
says
to
you
talk
can't
about
say
it.
something, that's regulation of speech. Thanks, Christian. Please say your name and your question, please.
Hi, my name is Amy, and I'm an immigrant. You guys are speaking about American values and American traditions. And I just wanted to say really quick that this nation was founded on the genocide of many indigenous Americans, the enslavement of countless African Americans, and the dehumanization of countless others who don't look or think like you do. With that being said, I think for you to sit up there with all the privileges that you have, whether it be your racial privileges, the fact that you speak English, or the fact that you've never had to seek asylum or had to cross the border as a refugee, I think for you to sit up there and talk about immigration and security and what is illegal or not illegal is some absolute bullshit.
Okay. Thank you.
First of all, I want to say that her parents immigrated to this country, and so did hers.
Thank you.
First of all, I want to say that her parents immigrated to this country, and so did hers. So let's talk about that.
What privileges are you talking about?
Yeah.
Speaking English? I speak 4 languages. Speaking English is not. What kind of privilege?
You don't believe speaking English is a privilege in this world?
It is easier, and
I
it
think
is kind
just
of
the fact that you don't believe that can really just answer a lot of my questions. And honestly, I don't have any more questions beside that. It was a statement. I think if I do have any question, it is how can you all stand up there and speak about these things, never having experienced half the things that you guys are trying
Because
to
we're
talk
Americans and it affects
about.
our country and we want the best for our country. You standing there and assuming we haven't or have experienced certain things because we're women or we're
Have you sought
conservative
asylum?
or because
Have
we're
you
white.
crossed the
Just one
border?
moment, please.
I have family who have.
So have I. How does
So have
that
I.
make you
So
any
this is
more
a big
qualified?
I'm not
We're
allowed
all
to relate.
American.
I have never had an abortion. Does that mean I'm not allowed to talk about abortion?
I didn't say that. I am not talking about whether or not you have the right to speak on abortions. I have the right to speak on abortions just as much as anyone else. But I'm saying for you to sit up there and speak about things that you haven't experienced as being right or wrong, you cannot speak on behalf of the people who have lost their lives or who have lost their family trying to do things that you can't even imagine because those circumstances are so terrible and so hard.
Yeah, we agree. We're not saying one side is right and one side is wrong. We're saying what our views are as Americans.
And
Because
so am
this
I.
isn't,
Thank you.
this isn't, yeah, brilliant. But this is an issue that affects our country. So all Americans should have an opinion on it, no matter how experienced or inexperienced you are.
And I think that Sarah's point here is that, she was trying to say that you can't talk about an issue because you haven't experienced it, and that's just simply not the case. You can talk about whatever issue that you want to talk about.
Thank you, ladies. So this is going to be the last question because we got to wrap this up. It's almost 3 o'clock. So, and we got a lot of stuff to take down. So this will be our last question. Sorry to everybody who didn't get to come back up and ask a question, but this will be the last one. So please state your name and your question, please.
Hi, my name is Gabby, and I wanted to talk about gun control. I also wanted to mention about how the NRA supported Trump in his last election in 2016, over $30 million. How do you guys feel about that? Do you know, because there's mass shootings in schools, there's mass shootings in public places, so our lack of gun control is really the issue.
Could you restate your question one more time?
I forgot.
Hello.
It's important then.
Take your time. Last one.
I want to talk about the issue of gun control.
Oh,
So
okay.
how the NRA funded Trump on his last election, that is an issue because of what's happening in schools, what's happening in public. All these mass shootings are happening and nothing is nothing is being taken action to stop gun control or stop guns,
Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I want to point out that just because we have, we're able to own guns in this country doesn't mean that, that the murder rates necessarily are associated with the amount of guns. If you look at Switzerland, for example, Switzerland has, for every 2 people in Switzerland, there's a gun exists in Switzerland.
Well, are we living in Switzerland?
No, but
we're living in America, right?
But I'm making the argument that
But there's also other countries that I can state that have gun controls and their lack of mass shootings in school has dropped down.
I mean,
are we living in those countries?
No, but are we living in Switzerland? Has she mentioned? No.
She should finish making her point before you start giving out stats.
Continue? Okay, so criminals. Okay, do you know? Sorry. Do you know why the Second Amendment was created? Why?
For our rights to bear arms.
That's incorrect, actually. The Second Amendment was created so that we could defend ourselves from a tyrannical government. And people will argue that, we shouldn't be worried about that today. It's 2019. What's the big deal? It's not going to be a tyrannical government. But I think Ben Shapiro made one of the most brilliant arguments I've ever heard about this. Is that the reason why his grandparents and parents, he's Jewish, by the way, if you've never heard of Ben Shapiro, the reason why his grandparents are ashes in Europe is because they did not fear a tyrannical government. And that is why we value owning guns so much, is because we value our individual liberty over the government in every situation. And in the case of criminals, okay, criminals aren't afraid of the law, obviously. If you make guns illegal, they're still gonna find a way to get them. You see that with illegal drugs, you see that with a lot of illegal substances. People find a way to do it anyway. So making it illegal isn't gonna erase the problem. Guns exist, they just exist. So we have to deal with that. And the way that we can, fight against that is by making the criminal fear the victim, because obviously the criminal does not fear what it's facing. It doesn't fear the government. It doesn't fear, being in jail. They don't fear those things. They need to fear the victims so that they don't commit these crimes.
If I can really quickly just jump in to support what you said. So what Shauna is brilliantly touching upon is the idea that the criminal should fear the victim or the victim to be. So there's a Florida criminologist who found that if a criminal thinks that the victim has a firearm, the criminal is 40% less likely to follow through with the crime. So that's just if he thinks the person is armed. I think what this just goes to show is that firearms are integral to our safety. Yes, they cause harm, but they also have the potential to do a lot of good.
Back to what you were saying that that either way, if either way, if we ban guns, they're gonna find a way to get the guns or illegal drugs or whatnot. But if we have laws that protect us, it's less like a risk to have someone that can go, to the back market, get a gun and shoot up school. So I feel like the lack of gun control in this country is the issue.
What specifically would you like to see implemented? Do you have any ideas?
There you go, universal background checks.
Those are already in place. We do that.
And I also want to bring it back to the reason why the Second Amendment was created is to fight against a tyrannical government. And if the government owns all of the weapons, has all the guns, has all those big tanks and everything, how are we supposed to fight against the government that's trying to take away our rights and our liberty? How are we supposed to do that without guns? They exist. We can't get around this issue.
Okay, thank you for your question. So, I want to thank everybody for coming. Thank you so much for being out here. Please give our ladies in the panel a round of applause. Give yourselves a round of applause as well. The questions were great. We had a great conversation. We'll be back out here actually on the 16th. 16th, immigration debate continuing. Brian Acosta is going to be part of that, and also Andreas, who's sitting over here at our No Che Day table. So if you didn't take the Che Day quiz, please walk over, talk to Andreas, take the quiz, and we appreciate all you coming, and we appreciate all the ladies for doing this. Thank you so much.
Thank you everybody for coming. And shameless plug, come to our meetings please every Tuesday, Wednesday, today at 3. Yep, today at 3.